Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive, a real forensic analysis into one of the most powerful archetypes from the Quran, the figure of Qarun. His story is more than just a tale. It's a profound case study on the corrupting influence of wealth, the psychology of entitlement, and the mechanics of divine justice. We're going to dissect this narrative piece by piece, examining the specific language and the events to understand its timeless moral warnings.
This question is really the central axis of our whole analysis. You see, the narrative of Qarun isn't just a historical account. It's a framework, and it's designed to force us to critically examine wealth itself. Is it simply a reward for being smart and capable? Or is it a crucible, a profound test of our character? This is the core tension we're going to explore.
So our analysis has to begin with the man himself, Qarun. He's placed during the time of the prophet Moses, and he's presented not just as some rich guy, but as the very personification of material excess. We're talking about a figure whose wealth reached absolutely legendary proportions.
Now, the text strategically gives us two key details to frame Qarun's character right from the start. First, it identifies him as being from the people of Moses. This is critical. It establishes that he wasn't an outsider, he was an insider who had access to divine guidance, which makes his later actions a deliberate rejection of a truth he already knew. Second, there's this incredible detail about the keys to his treasures. His wealth was so immense, the keys alone were a heavy burden for a group of strong men. Think about that. It's a brilliant literary device. It gives us a tangible way to measure an intangible concept, unfathomable wealth. The image of strong men struggling to carry just the keys totally bypasses numbers and gives you a sense of a material burden that, as we'll see, foreshadows his spiritual corruption.
The first warning he gets from his community is surgically precise. They tell him, do not exult. The Arabic word used here, farah, can just mean joy, but in this context it means a gloating, heedless kind of joy that's rooted in arrogance. It's the kind of happiness that comes from ego, not from gratitude. The wise people among his community diagnosed this immediately, like a spiritual sickness, and they gave him the direct antidote, a warning against celebrating the gift while completely forgetting the giver.
And his community didn't just give him an abstract warning. They offered a structured, actionable framework for a spiritual and financial course correction. They gave him a 5-point plan that was designed not to shame him, but to realign him with a more balanced, God-centered worldview. Let's analyze this framework point by point.
This 5-point counsel is actually a really sophisticated ethical system. Let's look at its structure. First, seek the hereafter. That establishes the ultimate priority. Use your wealth as a tool for your eternal life. But right after that, point 2, don't forget your worldly share, balances it out by rejecting extreme self-denial. It sanctions the legitimate enjoyment of life. Point 3, do good, tells you how to manage that tension. Be generous, almost like a transaction of gratitude. You mirror the divine generosity that you've received. And finally, points 4 and 5, no corruption. Set the hard boundaries. They're the ethical guardrails, making it clear that wealth must never, ever be used to cause social or moral decay. It's a complete holistic philosophy for the righteous management of power.
So, presented with this nuanced ethical framework, Qarun had a clear choice. He could reflect or he could reject. He chose rejection, and his response wasn't a debate or some counterargument. It was a single, concise declaration of pure hubris, a statement that becomes the story's ideological turning point and the very trigger for his downfall.
Let's do a forensic analysis of this pivotal statement. He says, I was only given it because of knowledge I have. This is the heart of his problem. The word for knowledge here could refer to his business smarts, maybe some scientific knowledge like alchemy, or just his own perceived genius. Whatever it was, the claim is absolute. He's saying there is a direct causal link between his knowledge and his wealth, and he completely severs the role of God's providence. This transforms his wealth from a trust given to him into an entitlement he believes he earned and owns all by himself.
And this slide really lays out the central ideological conflict. On one side, you have Qarun's worldview. I did this. My genius. My skill created this wealth. It's mine. Success is a measure of human greatness. On the other side, you have the righteous view. Wealth is a gift from God. It's a test of your character that requires you to be responsible. You can see there's no middle ground here. These two paradigms are mutually exclusive.
So Qarun's arrogance then moves from being a private belief to a public spectacle. When he appears in all his splendor, it wasn't a celebration, it was a calculated act of psychological warfare. He weaponized his wealth, parading it to create awe and envy, basically promoting his materialistic worldview as the superior one. This public display was a direct challenge to the spiritual teachings of Moses, designed to tempt people by showing them a powerful, tangible alternative.
This theatrical display of materialism turns out to be the final catalyst. In response to Qarun's very public transgression, the narrative describes a divine intervention that is just as public and just as dramatic.
The climax of the story is swift, and it is absolute. The text says, "So we caused the earth to swallow him and his home." The justice here is perfectly symmetrical. The very earth from which he extracted his wealth, the foundation he built his arrogant empire on, becomes the instrument of his own annihilation. And it's not just him, it's all the material symbols of his identity, his palace, his treasures, completely erased from existence.
This is the moment of total systemic failure for Qarun's worldview. Every single asset he had, financial, social, intellectual, was rendered completely powerless. His network of supporters, his material wealth, his so-called knowledge, none of it provided any defense against divine will. The man who claimed absolute agency was revealed to be absolutely powerless, demonstrating the ultimate hierarchy of power.
But the story doesn't end with Qarun's destruction. The final and maybe the most important part of the narrative is the profound lesson that's learned by those who witness this event. The focus now shifts from the one who is punished to the audience.
Just imagine the scene. The day before, many of these same people were looking at Qarun's parade, filled with envy, saying, "Oh, if only we had what Qarun's been given." They saw him as the pinnacle of success. But after witnessing his dramatic end, their entire worldview was shattered and instantly reformed in a moment of terrifying clarity.
Their words capture this massive cognitive shift. They move from envy to gratitude. They cry out, "Ah!" realizing that getting by in life isn't solely the result of your own skill or knowledge. It is God who extends provision to some and restricts it for others, according to a divine wisdom they can't comprehend. Their envy is instantly replaced by fear and thankfulness, as they recognize that their own relative poverty was actually a form of protection. Had they been in his place, with his arrogance, they would have met his fate.
So the narrative's conclusion crystallizes a new definition of success. It says that true success is not the accumulation of assets, but the correct attribution of their source. The story serves as a permanent case study against the seductive logic of self-made arrogance, fundamentally redefining achievement not as material gain, but as a state of spiritual alignment, humility, and gratitude.
And this, then, is the timeless diagnostic question the story of Qarun poses to every single generation. When we are confronted with immense worldly success, do we just see the genius of the individual, or do we perceive the hand of the divine? Do we feel envy, or do we feel awe? Our answer reveals which worldview we truly subscribe to, Qarun's, or that of those who witnessed his fall. That is the enduring test of this narrative.